Hi, I'm Chike Coleman, and that's Sanford Hess, and this is Real Reviews Home Edition, the show where we talk about movies and sometimes other stuff. This week, we're continuing our martial arts mayhem for the month of May, and we have two movies that have nothing to do with each other that we're reviewing this week. The first of which is Romeo Must Die, and the latter of which is Cats Don't Dance, from I believe 1996 or 1997. So first, let's talk about Romeo Must Die, and more importantly, it starred Jet Li. Jet Li has been a famous martial artist for years before I knew of his existence, but he came to his own in Romeo Must Die. Now, I want Sanford to take the plot on this one because I don't even.
Nice.
The plot doesn't matter to me with these martial arts movies. Just give me good action.
Sure.
Sanford, go ahead and tell the people what Romeo Must Die is about.
Well, it is it is essentially the story of Romeo and Juliet. So you have two families of crime, one made up of African Americans, the other one made up of people of Chinese descent who are either from Hong Kong or they're kind of not specific about that. So they take the place of the Montagues and the Capulets in the Romeo and Juliet script. So you've got, I mean, it's actually a really good setup. We start the movie by seeing that there's some bad blood that's occurring because the son of the Chinese leader is killed. And, there's a lot of suspicion about who's going to do that. And one person who is informed about his death is his brother, played by Jet Li, who then promptly escapes from prison and comes to America to help his family. So we have the story, sort of kicking off there. And then he meets the daughter of the warlord from the African American gang. Isaac is his name.
Played by
And,
Delroy Lindo.
yeah. And he was actually one of the best parts of the movie, I thought. His daughter, played by Aaliyah?
Aaliyah.
Aaliyah. So she, they kind of meet cute as they're wont to do in these movies. And, from there, it's a little bit of the normal Romeo and Juliet plot. So the two of them, however, proceed to learn about a large effort going on to buy up properties along the wharf in, I think it was San Francisco or Oakland. It's not really specific. With the purpose of having, actually it is Oakland, having a football team. And so that gives a nice subplot for the fact that these two families are actually, at the same time that they're feuding, they're kind of working together and both trying to be part of this big mega deal. And our two leads, our Romeo and our Juliet, are in constant danger as they make their romance and then sort of investigate what's going on. Now, that's kind of where it deviates significantly from the Romeo and Juliet plot because it does not end the way the Shakespeare play ends. It has a different ending entirely.
So here's what I thought about Romeo Must Die. It's a classic for many reasons. Mostly it's for the performance of Aaliyah. She was a singer who was breaking into the acting world, and this is where she became most known. Love her performance in the film. Love how her and Jet Li have chemistry together as they, work together to solve what their families are up to. There's a lot of other actors that I love in this film. I love Anthony Anderson as the comic relief throughout the film. He is amazing in everything he does and all of his little kind of racist punchlines that make no sense or make all sense depending on which one you hear.
Well, it shows kind of what, how things were different at the time. They included things in this movie that, yeah, you probably wouldn't hear in a movie today.
Right, exactly. And that's part of its charm, but also part of the thing that ages it so much. You also have Isaiah Washington as a villain within the film, who clearly has feelings for Aaliyah that are unrequited. And his kind of, I won't even say management, just overprotectiveness of her and who she's involved with and what she's doing is really abusive and almost sickening. But on the other side of the coin, you got this other guy who's fighting to be at the head of the table, Uh,
Kai, you're talking about the number two guy
yeah, the number two guy.
In Jet Li's side, yeah.
I mean, he's a piece of work as well, and also kind of derogatory at points. And I like the mix. And I like that they don't really go strictly for the Romeo loves Juliet connection. It's almost like Romeo is the protector and Juliet's, kind of more of an investigative reporter type, even though she's not really a reporter.
Right,
You get that vibe from her.
right.
The action and the martial arts action is amazing in this film, specifically a sequence involving Jet Li playing football with the rival gang.
So
Oh, some of those sweet
yeah,
moves.
I'm going to agree with you that that's probably the best martial arts scene in the movie, but I'm going to disagree with you that the martial arts are amazing. This movie has there's two complaints I have about the martial arts in this movie. Well, three complaints. The first one
Okay,
is
go ahead.
the first complaint is there's not enough of it. There's too
True.
much time with plot and characters. This is a martial arts movie. You know, we're here for some butt kicking. Second of all, this movie has wire work, which is a
Mm-hmm.
big turnoff for me. To me, this is the distinction between, well, and really it's the distinction between martial arts movies in the 2000s and before. If you watch a movie like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, it's all this wire work, and I don't get into it. Give me a good Jackie Chan movie from the 90s where it's all real humans doing real human things and not suspended on wires, because it just gets silly. Now, so that's my second complaint. My third complaint about this movie is the overuse of the kill shot where he does, damage to somebody that they show as an X-ray, where you see the injury occurring on the X-ray. I don't know where that originated. I saw it first, I think, in Final Destination, but
Oh.
it's overused, and I just especially I got to say, especially the wire work. As soon as I saw the wire work, I was like, oh god, all right, whatever. But going back to the football scene, no wire work in that one, and that was a kick-ass scene. So it can be done. It's just that they do it over much. Sorry. So yes, those are my complaints about the martial arts in this movie.
I mean, for one, Sanford, with you and I in martial arts, I'm going to completely agree with you.
Oh,
I'm not really a fan of wire work. I understand the poetry that they're trying to create with it, but most of the time in the early 2000s, even when you're talking about a film as famous as Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, that wire work didn't work. It didn't succeed to really immerse us inside the fights. The most fun the fights are is when you're seeing Jet Li use his hands and be creative with the elements around himself,
right.
rather than anytime he's jumping or kicking or anything else.
Right.
And
Yeah. So I mean, that's why the football scene works so well. And I guess the only other martial art scene that I really enjoyed was actually didn't have Jet Li, was the initial fight at the strip bar that sort of started the movie.
yeah, I mean that was okay. I didn't love it
Yeah.
as much as you. You may have not even loved it. You probably just liked it, but it didn't appeal to me as much as the football scene. I think that's the number one thing from that movie. That if you ask people who've seen the movie, they remember dim sum
Yeah.
and they remember the football fight scene. The
Yeah.
rest
And
of it is completely forgettable.
that would probably be the one I'd say. So I'm gonna I'm gonna tip my hat on the final question. If someone says, "Should I watch this movie?" I would say, "Hey, you know what? Go look up on YouTube for the football scene, and if you watch that, you've seen the best part." So, I gotta. The other thing is, I didn't really buy the relationship between him and Aliyah. Aliyah, sorry. Um, I didn't think they had chemistry. And part of it is that, I don't know how old he was when this movie was filmed, but he's much older than her. And it shows, and it's just, I didn't, I mean, unfortunately, they didn't, although they implied they were sort of, together and kind of interested in each other. Fortunately, it never really dipped into the realm of romance, because I absolutely would not have bought any romantic scenes between the two of them.
I mean, I was very happy for that as well. I would say that Jet Li was probably late 30s, early 40s in this film. Um, I bought the friendship, but that's what I bought. Like
Right.
that's That was the main draw that pulled me in. They really never made out or anything crazy. So I was like, this is all within the bounds of, well, dare I say it, realism. So I'm okay with that. It's not feeling forced to me. That's why I liked Aaliyah's performance because it didn't go the obvious way.
Right.
Do I
Well,
think
that's
this movie is recommendable? Um, if you just turn off your brain entirely, sure, it's going to be a great time for you because it's gently uh, doing crazy things, even though there's wire work involved. If you're actually using your cinemaphile brain, you're going to have problems everywhere with this movie. It's fun, but it's forgettable, and that's how it's meant to stay.
right. And if you're looking for a better adaptation of Romeo and Juliet,
Which one would you say?
if you're looking for a better adaptation, I would go. Wow, there's so many options. I would maybe the Baz Luhrmann one with Leonardo DiCaprio. You could even go with gnomes, Romeo and Juliet. There's a lot of ones out there that I think take the story and do a better job with it. So
I'm more a fan of the what is it, 1977 version by
oh,
Warner Brothers.
yeah, well that one, I mean that was more straight up filming
I
of it.
know, but
Yeah.
that's why I'm a fan of it because uh, this may be a future opinion, but I'm not really that big of a fan of Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. I think it's oversaturated entirely.
Ooh,
Um,
maybe it deserves a rewatch on my side to see if my memory of it holds up.
Maybe so. If you can handle John Leguizamo for the 45 to 50 minutes he's on screen, then maybe we can talk about that off air. Um,
Fair enough. Fair
with
enough.
that said, talking about things that are oversaturated and over colorful, our second film is going to be Cats Don't Dance. This is an animated film. So, for all you parents out there who really want an animated movie for your kids to watch that's not, what is it, Peppa Pig or Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, Cats Don't Dance may be the perfect thing for you. It stars Scott Bakula, Jasmine Guy, the singing voice of Natalie Portman,
Natalie
Lindsay
Cole.
Ridgway. Oh, I'm sorry, Natalie Cole,
Sorry.
Lindsay Ridgway, uh, Don Knotts, Kathy
Yes.
Magini. Just a slew of really wonderful performers are in this film. Um,
And as you pointed out when we selected this film, choreographed by.
Oh yes, the reason I selected this film was because it was choreographed by the late great Gene Kelly. All the steps you see that are in the dancing sequences for this movie were based on his footwork that he completed for the film before he passed away. So it really is his final work. Um, Premise is that Danny the cat has really always wanted to be a star in Hollywood, but when he arrives at Hollywood and meets a penguin named Pudge, he finds that there are no parts for animals to star in feature films in a studio called Mammoth Pictures. From that, he slowly catches the eye of the main child star, Darla Dimple. Uh,
What a
and
great character she is.
the singing voice of Lindsay Ridgway is used for Darla Dimple. And if you're wondering who Lindsay Ridgway is, she played the younger sister for Corey Matthews on Boy Meets World, named Morgan, and she is fantastic as a singer for this film. Um, you follow Danny following his passions and taking Darla's advice on how to become a star. Uh, Darla is assisted by a butler named Max. He is a giant. He is like Arnold Schwarzenegger on giant steroids. He comes in slow like Boris Karloff, but exits quickly like the Flash every time he makes damage. Don't know how that's possible, but it's how the movie plays it. You see, of course, Danny go through trials and tribulations to make his dreams come true and nearly give up until he's stopped by the people who care about him most. The animals he inspired to believe in themselves and to believe in the music and the talents they have. Um,
Especially the female cat lead, played by Jasmine Guy, like you said,
Correct,
Sawyer. Yeah.
Sawyer. Um, I'm going to be straight up with you.
Yeah.
In the 1990s,
Mm-hmm.
as a child, this was my favorite movie. Watched it on every car trip humanly possible. Why? Because I find the music so memorable. I find everything about the movie within the hand drawn animation flows. It's in ways, in parts, better than a Disney picture because it's pre Pixar, really.
Right.
So I really love that, they take little bits of old Hollywood and, insert it in there in the opening dance number as kind of a joke to say, here's where we are, here's the setup, here's why he's so fascinated by all these things because he's been watching it for years. Um, and here's why that matters. Um, just these characters are all so memorable. They all have quirks. They're so specific. Like Tilly the hippo is large, but they don't make it a fact that she's large. They make it a fact that she's sweet and clumsy. They don't go for the obvious jokes you would see in an animated film, and they give everybody really a big personality. Not something that, in my opinion, would be annoying, but would be endearing. That's why this film lasts and has a cult following the way it does, is because it's endearing. Now, go ahead, Sanford. You
Yeah, I
had
was going
something?
to say one of the decisions they made that I think helps with that is that they chose to really focus on this core group of like 6 or 8 characters, as opposed to just trying to. I mean, first of all, instead of just doing it about Danny, the lead, they really. For example, I thought some of the best lines were the fish, whatever her name.
Yeah.
You know, so
Fish and the goat, you mean?
yeah, well, just the fish. I thought her lines were funny. So but I agree with you. I mean, that they took the time to actually develop these characters. Yes, they're hand drawn characters, but one of the things I noticed in the credits is that each one of the lead characters had a set of animators and a sort of almost like a character director, which I think came through because again there's a consistency to them, and then there's actually layers to their personality, like the goat, that go beyond the sort of basic. And again, it's a cartoon, so all this is ironic, but it's not a 2-dimensional character, it's a 3-dimensional character, even though it's hand-drawn animation on 2 dimensions. So there you go.
Now, my big question, the thing that I'm most worried about, since this is a combination of two things you don't really traditionally like, musicals and animation, did you like
Wait,
this
whoa, whoa,
film?
whoa, whoa. I love animation. Love animation.
Okay,
My problem is musicals.
problem is musicals. Knowing that this is very musicals centric and musically involved, did you like this film?
I liked this film. Uh,
Tell me why.
well, for a lot of the reasons that we just talked about. I mean, yes, there were some, what I would consider to be some corny musical numbers. Gene Kelly, I've seen a couple of Gene Kelly movies now, and to me, the musical numbers, this is both a good thing and a bad thing. They're very Gene Kelly-esque. They have the same sort of song and dance mentality as Singing in the Rain or American in Paris. The choreography is the same, and I think again, it's an honor to him that they chose to do that, and that they drew it in according to his style, which is great. It really is. It's just that they're kind of corny musical numbers. Now, that being said, I like this movie a lot. Parts of this movie I thought were really fabulous. The part that I had to rewind and watch it again because it was so genius, was the beginning of the movie with her, the spoiled young actress's opening of the Noah Ark song. I just,
Oh God.
God, that was
That you
genius.
loved? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I had to go back and listen to the lyrics and watch it more carefully to really appreciate there was some good stuff in there. But I mean, the other part of this movie that I think appeals to to cinephiles is there's a lot of inside jokes about Hollywood and auditioning and agents and contracts and directors and stars that anybody who's watched a decent number of Hollywood movies, which is a lot of us cinephiles, can
Mm-hmm.
appreciate. So the fact that they're going through all the same stuff, and I love the sort of process of him sort of winging his part in the Noah's Ark sketch.
Oh,
And
the
sort of
scat.
crowding out the star. I just think stuff like that. It's a classic case of, because it's an animated set of characters, you can do something different that's really very funny in a way that may not work as well if they were humans.
Right, and there is a touch on, this is a weird way to say it, but racism.
That's right. That's right.
And
Because animals don't sing and dance. That's the whole point of the movie.
mm-hmm. And I think that that's an interesting and unique lesson for children to learn who are coming up in the age of social media, that no matter how different anyone is, they can still be as unique and as special as you.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, is that something you picked up on when you were a child, or is that something you realized later?
Uh, I kind of picked up on it a little as a child, but mostly in this specific rewatch.
Hmm. Well,
Uh,
it's a movie that takes place. I mean, it's a movie, from the 90s, but it takes place in the 30s, or at least, sort of somewhere in that range.
yeah.
So, I think that's a really interesting point, because you're right. At that time, you want to talk about people who couldn't get a role,
Mm-hmm.
anyone of color who was trying to crack into Hollywood, it was Lily White. So,
Including the other occasions when you'd have those Charlie Chan shorts. I didn't know until I saw one that, oh, that's not an Asian American actor. That is a Caucasian man doing a caricature
right.
of such a person. And when I saw that in film class growing up, that was very, very troubling to know that, and to see that. And this film exemplifies the beauty of being different and showcasing your talent in whatever you do. I mean, you ran the theater for how many years was that?
3.
3 years you
Feels like
ran.
longer, but it was really only 3.
Yeah. But yeah, you ran the theater for 3 years, and who knew that anyone could actually, independently run a movie theater? I didn't until I met you. So I mean, there are things that come about from people's talents and people's passions, and I think this film exemplifies that to a high degree. Now, I wanted to quickly move on, but do you recommend this film?
Yes, yes. And I think you made a good point. I mean, parents who are looking for something different to show their kids, if you've watched through all the Pixar movies and you've seen all the Disney movies, this one's rated G. It's got nothing objectionable in it. And I mean, I think there's some interesting parts that you just brought up that could lead to some discussions. And you might even use the opportunity, if you were so inclined, to show your kids something like Singing in the Rain afterwards, so
Yeah,
that they could, this would be a good segue into introducing some of those films. So yes, absolutely, I agree. I recommend it.
I highly recommend it too, as it's a childhood favorite. Not only that, but it features excellent song and dance numbers and is colorful enough not to bore the kids to sleep.
And
Uh,
it's the hand-drawn animation is great. I mean, it feels like the Warner Brother cartoons that I grew up with. And I there was a to me there was a lot of Bugs Bunny kind of reference, not references, but the Bugs Bunny feel to it,
yeah, the
which
slapstick nature of it.
yeah, especially as sort of it escalated between Danny and this child star. As she got worse and worse, it just reminded me of more and more Bugs Bunny cartoons.
Speaking of escalation and childish things at play, we have some movie news that we need to impart to our audience, in that because of the success of Trolls World Tour, the sequel to the original Trolls film, the Universal Studios has decided to cease the use of putting movies out into movie theaters.
Have they said they're going to stop, or just that they're also going to release to the home?
Well, I'm sorry. They said they were going to release to the home. The movie theaters themselves said, because you're going to do that, you're trying to bankrupt us, and we will no longer show your films at any of our theaters. This is happening not only from AMC, but also the Regal theaters as well.
It won't last.
You know,
Look,
okay, we
it's a
need to
lovely
definitely.
print. Yeah, I actually I wrote about this recently online. It's a lovely principled stand, but I had to look ahead to see what the Universal release slate was. But they have another Jurassic World sequel coming out in 2021.
Yes,
It'll show at AMC. I guarantee it. So look, I mean, but to me, this is huge. It's huge that they have decided to say we are going to release to other platforms, including home watching, on the same day as the theaters, and that just crushes the theater's economic model. So
I mean, do you think that will last, or do you think people will say the price for this is way too high? I'm not gonna bother.
the price isn't high when you consider the price of going to the movies and the popcorn and the
The
soda and
drive, the gas, and everything else. I see
yeah.
your point.
Yeah, and especially if you're taking a family, it's the calculation's easy.
Yeah,
So
you can.
yeah, I truly believe that I mean, what's going to happen, I think, is that over the next couple of decades, theaters will phase out. I mean, they already have been phasing out, but they will continue to phase out. There will still be a small number of ones that sort of it'll be like a niche experience, like, oh, hey, let's do something crazy this month. Let's actually go to a movie theater and and probably a lot of the content will either be old movies, or you could even see a lot more streamed content at theaters. I could see like there being an opening, like take an example of one of these Netflix series, sort of opens a new season. Like just go back and say Game of Thrones, right? So it was a Game of
Yeah,
Thrones premiere or that weekly release. I could see that being a theatrical event now. I mean, it's ironic, but that's what's going to lead back to people having in the theaters is, hey, it's Sunday night. There's a new Game of Thrones coming on. Let's go to the theater and watch it.
right,
You know,
right.
but the actual normal sort of 2 hour movie, 2.5 hour movie that's getting released to theaters for 4 weeks and then it's going to go to some video platforms, that's done.
Hmm.
Yep.
I mean, I would, based on what I've heard, I would agree with you. I feel really bad about that, knowing how much I love independent films and how hard those are to um get to in general nowadays. I still remember the last movie I ever saw at the art theater um, before it shut down.
What was it?
A French film called The Faithful Man.
I did
Uh,
not see that one.
that was, I think, from last year or the year before. But the last movie that I had an even more positive experience with was watching The Phantom Thread. Daniel Day Lewis's final
Mm-hmm.
acting gig. Amazing to be in that room to see that for the very first time. And of course, I have many other film art theater memories that we could probably share on another program. But I hope, for the sake of my own heart, that this frowning upon of movie theaters does not last, because the communal experience will die with it if that's true. And
Yeah.
I
Well, and
feel
so
really
we'll
bad
have
about
to we'll have to bring this discussion forward to the next show because I mean that's you nailed it, but at the same time, I think this is just one of many changes that the pandemic's going to make on our regular life. So, with that being said,
it.
do we have a plan for next week?
Planned for next week will be yet another martial arts film, but I think I'm going to pair it with something comedic because I haven't had a good laugh in a while.
All right.
So
Well,
we'll look forward to doing that next week, and we will see you again next week for another home edition of Real Reviews. We'll see you guys at the movies at home. Bye, guys.